So, my name is Beate van Loo-Born. I'm the COO of an organization called Climate Arc. It's a non-profit that looks to unlock private capital to flow towards climate finance solutions. As you can tell, I am not from the print industry. I've had a career in finance and data, but I am a little bit of a big picture and systems theory nut, which is, I think, the reason I was invited to come here today and speak to you about the future and what's next. Now, unfortunately, I did misplace my crystal ball. So I had to go out and read a whole bunch of books, which I'm going to go through in detail now in this presentation, every single one of them. No, just kidding. I'll obviously just give you the cliff notes. But after doing all this research, I realized there are two things that are going to occupy us for the next couple of decades, occupy the industry, politics, and all of that. And those two topics are, drum roll, artificial intelligence and climate change. When I found this out, my reaction was a little bit like this. Not really all that surprising, is it? Now, the thing with these two topics is, though, that they are systemic and they have a massive impact on everything we do on our lives, and they're in the news all the time. So they are quite important. Now, in these books and in these, all these publications, people usually take the positive or the negative stand. So there's always an optimist and a pessimist. Now, I'm going to take you on a little journey. Imagine this scenario. Look at the picture. The year is 2100. Climate change has ravaged the planet. Coastal cities have been inundated and extreme weather events are commonplace. Large parts of the world are too hot to survive. Food shortages and disease outbreaks are widespread. AI has taken over most jobs, spreading misinformation and supporting populism and extremism. Governments have entirely collapsed. Societies are divided and unstable, crumbling under mental health pandemics and economic contraction. People are unemployed, misinformed, surveyed, and constantly controlled. AI and climate change have led to a world where freedom and democracy have been eliminated. Nice story for a Thursday morning, isn't it? Now, there's also the other camp that goes, everything's going to be fine, and there's going to be utopia. So listen to this. The year is 2100 as well. Climate change has been solved through technology and human collaboration. The world is powered by clean, affordable, renewable energy, and people live in harmony with nature, within nature, breathing clean air in temperate climates. AI has been fully capitalized on, and it's used to improve lives of everyone, everywhere. Technological advances in agriculture produce enough food to feed the world's growing population. AI-powered medical systems have cured diseases and extended the human lifespan. For those that choose to work, and not everybody does, jobs are fulfilling, while AI is doing all blue-collar and service jobs. Misinformation has been entirely eliminated, and the power of democracy has been reinstalled, backed by an AI-supported, completely impartial criminal justice system. We are living in the golden age of human flourishing. Now, if you had the choice, I can imagine which one you would pick. But unfortunately, I have to burst your bubble. Neither one of these are very likely. Now, why is it so hard to actually end up in the middle? Why is it so hard to find a realistic scenario? The reason is that it's really hard to sift through all this complexity. AI and climate change are complex and systemic phenomena. They have a significant impact on everything we do in our society. They're developing at mind-boggling speed. And they cannot really be stopped. We could talk about AI being stoppable. Climate change surely cannot be stopped. Now, what do we do in these scenarios where we've got something that basically makes our brain hurt because it's so difficult to understand? It makes us anxious because bad things might happen. There's lots of risk around it. And really, it is not in our job description to have an impact on it and to solve any of these problems. These topics are hyper objects. They're so big and so vast that we can't actually understand them. Tim Morton coined this term. He said they're things that are massively distributed in time and space relative to the human. So it basically just means it's bigger than us. James Bridle said it in a bit of an easier way, and he essentially said, look, they're so vast and pervasive, we cannot make sense of them. And as I said, what do we do in those situations when we got these big topics? We delegate. We delegate upwards, we outsource. These pictures are 8 years apart. On the left side, you have the UN delegates at COP21 2015, where they signed the Paris Agreement, basically agreeing that we're going to solve and tackle climate change. On the right side, it's a couple of weeks ago in the UK. It's the US, China, and the EU signing the first global declaration for the safe development of artificial intelligence. So what does that remind me of? Reminds me of a traveling circus. I know this is a bit cheeky and it's a bit mean, and I say this in the most loving way. I'm one of those people that goes to COP, that's been to Climate Week many times. So if anything, if I'm not a performer, I'm definitely somebody that sits in the audience in those conferences. But is it really fair to expect a whole bunch of delegates from these countries to understand and control an industry whose best and brightest can hardly understand their own creations, an entire tech industry? Can we really expect them to have that impact? And can we expect them to understand climate change, to set the goals to change climate change, and then make the entire world move towards that direction? The Sustainable Development Goals are a really good example of a good attempt at that, but we're nowhere near where we're supposed to be. Now, we still haven't gotten to the point where we can actually figure out what the future is going to look like and connect those dots between a lot of high-level information and a lot of detailed information. Now let's demystify that a little bit, and I'll start with climate change. Climate change is a difficult one. It is essentially something that has an insane time lag, and we all know the definitions of it. It basically, I call it global weirding. It's not really global warming. It's a change in weather patterns that is permanent, a change in the global climate that is permanent, that is created by human activity. That's how the IPCC creates it. Now, the problem with it is the human race likes instant gratification and instant repercussions. Climate change doesn't work like that. My flight to Spain that I'm taking tomorrow to go on holiday is not going to result in an instant flood in my hometown. It's the collective action of everybody that at some point will have that effect. And we need to understand that to really understand why we need to make changes. And I don't want to sound like Greta Thunberg here. I think it's just important for us to get to that point where we have the understanding to not have that anxiety. So there's a couple of concepts that are important to get here. And that is runaway climate change, which is triggered by cascades and feedback loops, bringing us to tipping points, and then leading to ripple effects in all areas of our existence. Now let's unpack that. Runaway climate change is essentially your worst case scenario. It's where climate change becomes self-sustaining and irreversible. So imagine you are sitting you're the captain of a massive vessel, a massive ship. The ship's driving down with you or down a river, and on the horizon you see a waterfall. If your ship gets too close to that waterfall, it will fall down, it'll fall off the cliff, it'll sink. That's runaway climate change. That's when you can't pull it back up, you can't reverse it. You don't want to get to that point. So what you do is you throw out the anchors, you put everything in reverse, but because it's a massive tanker, it's a massive ship, it will keep propelling forward. You can't stop it. All you can do is hope that it doesn't get to the edge. Now, what makes it propel forward? The feedback loops. We talk a lot about the ice caps melting. We talk a lot about the polar bears and the poor animals, but really what's the cause or what's the problem behind it? If the ice melts, sun doesn't get reflected up, it gets absorbed into the black ocean or the dark ocean. The ocean heats up, melts more ice. Hence, there's a feedback loop. The permafrost in Siberia, same thing. If the permafrost thaws, it releases methane, which is an insanely powerful greenhouse gas. heats up the atmosphere, melts more permafrost. Those are the feedback loops. At some point, they accelerate so much that they then jump over to other phenomena in the environment. For example, the ice caps. When the ice caps melt, at some point they release so much fresh water into the North Atlantic Ocean that then disrupts the Gulf Stream. That will then disrupt the weather events. And that's where you have tipping points. That's where you can't go back. So you reach those thresholds where the self-reinforcing feedback loops are essentially irreversible. That then has the ripple effects. And that's where climate change affects everything. So those are unintended consequences on our political systems, our economic systems, and our societies. All very doom and gloom, I know. I'm going to pull you back up. Now, not all is lost. And the reason I'm telling you this is because we just need to understand where those tipping points are, where those boundaries are, and we need to be able to reverse them. John Powers, in his book Hope in Hell, actually explained this really well. He said, look, we can still act, it's just we've got a decade to do it. So you're basically on this ship and you want to make sure you stop it. And you have that time span, but you got to do everything in your power to move that way. And that's where companies' net zero strategies, that's where the regulations and all of that comes in. And that's what eventually will create then the change. Now, as I said, hope is not a belief. It's not praying to God. It's actually believing that your actions can have a difference. We need to be realistic about it, though. Moving over to AI, I think that there is clearly a possibility here for AI to help us solve the climate crisis or any other massive problems that we have in the world, that we see in the world today. But let's go into AI first and talk about what it actually is, because I think it's affecting any industry, and we're all thinking about it, even if we don't necessarily admit it. So AI, and a lot of people define this in different ways. AI is essentially the ability of a machine to simulate human intelligence. And we've got very different forms of that, and you're all confronted with those every day. I mean, you've got your natural language processing, so your Google Translate, your Siri, your Alexa, or the more sophisticated versions, the Bard, the GPT, and full disclosure, I actually use those quite a lot. And it's essentially like talking to a very, very, very smart 8th grader. So they're very quick to analyze everything and to sift through all this information, but at the same time, they're very naive, and sometimes they come up with these very, very dumb conclusions in a way, very immature conclusions. So the more you use these tools, the more you also realize they've got massive limitations. Then you've got your regular machine learning, which is used for fraud detection, used for medical diagnosis, and gives you your purchase recommendations on Amazon and things like Netflix. You've got your computer vision, self-driving cars, satellite imagery, and so on. And then robotics, some people include robotics and machine learning as well. Some more sophisticated, like surgery, and others just like manufacturing robots. Now, artificial intelligence is actually not the hyper object here. It's actually embedded in a bigger phenomenon. And that phenomenon is a term coined by Klaus Schwab. He's the head of the WEF. It's called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And it's the fourth industrial revolution. Industrial revolutions are not a new thing, but this in particular is a fusion of technologies. So it's not just industries. It's the fusion of technologies blurring the lines between physical, digital, biological spheres. And it, again, disrupts everything we do. It disrupts our lives, it disrupts our industries, and it changes the way we relate to each other. Now, just like with the other industrial revolutions, there's always change, and there has always been change. I mean, the first one was around steam engines, the second one around electricity and steel, the third one, which is actually still going on, around digitization and computers. AI, as I said, is at the center of this, and it's just massively accelerating this movement. It's giving it that velocity, that speed, also that complexity and that massive system impact. And that's the major difference between those different industrial revolutions, and especially this last one. Now, going into AI, different to climate change, AI has a little bit of this Jekyll and Hyde connotation to it, where we can use it for the better, we can use it for the worse, we can be scared of it, we can be excited about using it. It just kind of depends on how you interact with AI and how you use it to your advantage. Now, if we look at what we're afraid of and what we're excited about, the fact of the matter is AI will replace some jobs. AI will take the jobs of accountants, of lawyers, of some analysts. AI has massive bias because it is based on human input. And human input is biased. AI creates its own output, and it creates that output much quicker than human output can be created. So at some point, relatively, you've got more machine output than human output, which will then make it uncontrollable. It will make it undigestible for humans because there's so much of it. And in the end, it's a massive risk for us. Also, what we have is a collection of data on our movements, on our activities. All our devices are interconnected. We've got imagery that can control us and survey us. In the end, we've got a massive lack of privacy in this. If this information gets into the wrong hands, governments or criminals, it can be weaponized against us. And last but not least, AI hallucinates. AI is wrong a lot of the times, and it presents you with conclusions with utmost confidence that are completely wrong. So those are definitely risks of AI. But then, on the other hand, imagine if at any point in time you've got 30 interns at your fingertips. They don't complain, they don't need purpose, they don't need breaks, they don't need to travel the world. They just do whatever you want. They write your memos for you, they do your analysis, they write your first drafts for everything. You also you could go into surgery and be sure that your surgeon doesn't have shaky hands because the surgery is going to be done by a machine, and the machine has done it a million times and it's got a 98% success rate. That would be pretty nice, wouldn't it? Also, all the analysis, the cancer research, the climate change technology research happens so much quicker because AI does all the analysis for us, it does all the computing for us. We just need to ask the right question. So really what it comes down to is, how do we deal with this situation? And I think we're all afraid of this. We're all afraid of losing relevance, personally and in our industries. We're afraid that AI is going to replace either our product or our jobs, or again, our entire sectors. The point really is, it doesn't make sense to compete with AI where it can do the same work as a human, because it will be able to do it better. What we need to look at is elevating ourselves to the point that we can step on the AI and then do things that the machine can't. At this point, an AI can provide you with leadership. It doesn't have creativity. It cannot inspire. It doesn't have the drive to explore. At least right now, that's the case. So if we keep that in mind, then we can look at it positively rather than negatively. There's one other point I want to make in this, and that's the truth. So yes, in journalism, in academia, and in education, we have certain risks. There's a potential for cheating and plagiarism. There is information bias. It might kill our creativity. It might limit our critical ability to think critically. And obviously we've got an over-reliance on the machine at some point. Just like now nobody can do math in their heads anymore because we've got calculators, we've got our phone. We don't know our north from our south, from our east, from our west, because we've got Google Maps and it tells us to take a right, and we take a right when it tells us to. Now those are negative impacts to a certain degree, but are they really more negative than they're positive? Technology has always influenced education, it's always influenced journalism, it's also always influenced academia. I'm in a PhD program at the moment, and we were sitting together with our professors, and one of them was saying, well, look, you're probably the last cohort that's actually going to do a manual literature review. At some point, that's going to be done by an AI, by a machine. But you were expected to use those tools. You were expected to use them properly and use your time rather than sifting through documents, searching for documents. You are doing research on what the next step is. You're asking the right questions. You're taking that information and, again, elevating your impact on it. So I think that's definitely a positive development. And also, we can create a more equitable and inclusive education system for everyone, because education will be more accessible through AI. One last point I want to make on this, and this goes back to our traveling circus topic. If you are Dr. Frankenstein, and just to clarify, the monster is actually not Frankenstein. Dr. Frankenstein is the one that's creating the monster. So if you're Dr. Frankenstein and you're creating a monster in your lab, you are to make sure that before you let the monster out, it can exist on the outside without turning into this evil creature. Right? So what I mean by that is, if these tech companies create these technologies, they're the only ones that really can safeguard them. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be any regulation. And the CEO of OpenAI was recently quoted in saying, there needs to be more regulation on AI. Yes, that's true, and I totally agree with that. But the people that can really tell what's right and what's wrong and what's safe and what's not, those are the creators of it. And at the same time, when we use these monsters, we need to use them responsibly. We can't weaponize them, and that goes for everyone. So there's 3 points that I want to leave you with today. And one is, the genie is not going back into the bottle. We just need to be careful what we wish for. AI is not going away, just like calculators didn't go away and Google Maps is not going away. We just need to use it in the right way. Climate change, by the way, is also not going away. Secondly, accountability, responsibility, action. Everybody's got it, not just the traveling circus. And the traveling circus is part of it. Absolutely, we need the regulation, but it comes down to industries or companies, and we have the choice. We can either make the best of it and utilize it, or we can weaponize it. And then lastly, one positive note. I do believe AI can really help us. It's a massive opportunity for us to address bigger problems that we're dealing with, and do that in a very, very, very quick way if we just ask the right questions and use the tool properly. And for me, personally, obviously that is climate change, because I do think they're inextricably linked. And with that, I leave you to think about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Beate.